Hi, I'm Dave Buttsier. I'm one of the elders here at Eagle Christian Church and just love being here. Love the fact that we've grown over these 30 years and watching what God is doing through the ministry here, and just hope that it continues and look forward to the next 30 years. I probably won't be around for all of it, but I plan to be here for some of it anyway.
My name's John Gunst. I've been an elder at Eagle Christian Church a couple of different times, currently serving for about the last 7 years.
One of the things that's been so gratifying is to watch what God is doing through Steve and the Eagle Christian Church and the ministry here. We look forward to what he has planned next, and we thank you for everyone that continues to support what the vision is here, and we look forward to the next 30 years, and God only knows what's going to happen.
I certainly recall way back in the day when Steve thought once the church reached about 200 people, it was time for a new campus. And watching us blow past 200 and blow past 400 and 600 and just keep growing. The satellite campuses are something I never saw coming. It's amazing to watch that happen. It's wonderful that we have the strength and the knowledge and the resources and the leadership to continue to grow. I'm looking very much forward to the Garden City campus that's about to kick off, and as well as other campuses around the valley, and then who knows where we go from there. But it's all due to the wonderful members of Eagle Christian Church and all the staff and all the volunteers that make this successful.
Well, hello. Yeah, we're excited about that. I just want to welcome you to Eagle Christian Church. Thank you so much for being here this weekend. If you're watching online, one of our campuses, thanks for joining us as well. And Steve, welcome back.
Oh, it's great to be back.
Yeah.
And I just want to say happy anniversary, everybody.
We're excited about that. 30 years.
30
and
years.
that's really what we're talking about this weekend, is we want to take a time and just a weekend to celebrate 30 years of what has happened here at ECC.
It's a celebration of a great God who's done amazing things.
Right.
And so we want to share with you what God has done. In fact, I'd put it this way. Every time it seems like we've had some obstacles in front of us, they actually haven't been obstacles. They've been kind of something God has planned for us to leap over and push us farther ahead than we would have if we hadn't have reached those obstacles. So we're going to share some of those stories.
We're just going to share a story of what really, honestly, truly God has done through Eagle Christian Church, and how it's just been fun to be part of the ride. And we feel like celebration and joy are really like a biblical concept.
Absolutely.
And we've even talked the last couple weeks about things like Passover. And the purpose of like a lot of Jewish festivals like Passover were to look back and remember what God had done for his people. And so that's the heart behind this weekend, is we want to look back and see what God has done with us and just the amazing, incredible things.
We want to remind ourselves that God has been so faithful and just celebrate how great our God is.
Right, exactly. So we're going to celebrate this weekend. We're going to celebrate what God has done for the last 30 years. So let's start at the beginning, Steve. We're going to tell some stories. And when you look back on 30 years of ministry, it started with you really having kind of a God-given desire to plant churches.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
I've always said that I want God to do something with my one and only life. And I've always wanted to be part of something much bigger than myself. In fact, I would even say, I don't care if people know who Steve Crane is, but I'd love to invest my life in something much bigger than myself, and something that far after I'm gone, if Jesus tarries for 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 years, that I've been part of something that's going to continue to tell the gospel story long beyond me. And so I've wanted to do that. And so church planting was one of those things that I wanted to invest in church planting because one of the most effective means of evangelism in the United States. People love to be on the ground floor. And it actually even stemmed from more than that. It stemmed from the fact that I worked for Boise Bible College, and I went to a church across town because I thought it was good Bible preaching. And every time I'd invite one of my neighbors to go to church with me, they'd kind of look at me and say, "You drive how far to go to church?" And it was just difficult to get somebody to go with me. And so kind of had this vision of let's have churches in communities where people could go to church there.
Right. Let's put a church in someone's neighborhood. And so you identified Eagle, Idaho, with this belief that Eagle was kind of under-churched at the time. There wasn't a lot of churches here. And so you said, we're going to Eagle. So tell us about that.
Yeah, 30 years ago, if you know, Eagle was just a little blip on the map. And in fact, the main road, State Street, went right through downtown Eagle. At the time, it was just kind of a sleepy little place. There weren't any churches that were dynamic, doing anything. Most of them were kind of struggling, and yet people were starting to move into Eagle, Idaho. And so I thought, what a great place to live. But more than that, a place that needs a Bible-believing church. So we kind of identified Eagle as that place.
Right. And you talked to a church planting organization, said, well, I'm going to plant a church in Eagle, Idaho.
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, we got your back, we're going to support you. So you quit your job at the Bible college.
Yep.
And you moved across the country to work on your master's
Yeah,
degree.
I wanted to finish. I'd been working on a master's degree, but I wanted to finish that because I wanted that done and behind me, and so I could really focus on planting a church. So I quit my job at Boise Bible College and moved clear across the country, and I had not been there 2 weeks before the church planting organization said, we really want you to plant a church in Eagle, Idaho. And it's like, yeah, that's the plan. And then they said, but we don't have any money.
Yeah.
And so that was like a knife stab or something in terms of that was our plan. That's what we were going to do. We had no other plan moving forward. And my wife, Sally, took me aside, and she asked me really 3 questions. And the first question is, do you think God is calling you to plant a church? And I said, yes, I do. And then she said, do you think that if we don't do this, that 3 years, maybe 5 years from now, you're going to look back and say, we should have planted a church? And I said, I absolutely think that. And then she said, if you think God is calling you to plant a church, don't you think God's going to provide for that? I was like, of course I do. And so we said, we're moving forward.
Right.
And in fact, we moved back from Illinois, and with a family,
Right.
I moved back into my parents' house, which is really a little strange.
But
right?
really, there would be no Eagle Christian Church without Sally Crane. So I think we have to say thank you to Sally.
Yeah, so
for just a
many
second.
reasons there would not be a church here. And so we lived with my parents for a while until we were able to purchase our own home. And then in that home, we planted Eagle Christian Church with 7 people in our living room.
And so you started, 7 people, a little tiny kind of small group. And I think you said you had people saying, well, when are we starting church? When are we doing actual church?
Yeah, they kept asking, when are we going to do church? It's like, we're doing church. And I kept saying, when are you going to give to church? And it's like, when we start church. It's like, we're doing that. So very quickly, actually, we started in May and then June, realized we need to actually do Sunday morning services. And so we're looking for a place to meet, and we went to the Seventh-day Adventist building.
Right, it's still there in Eagle.
Yep.
That's where it really got me.
And for the course of the next 3 months, I actually met with them once a month, the board at the Seventh-day Adventist Church, about here's who we are, here's what we'd like to do, we'd like to rent your building. And they kept talking about it. And finally they said, look, we're going to have a meeting Saturday after church. You come back Monday morning, and we'll let you know about if you can rent our building or not.
Right.
So I was pretty excited about it. I thought the conversations had went well, and I was pretty confident that was going to happen. So Monday morning, first thing, as soon as I knew the office was open, I actually called on the phone and said, hey, I want to know if I could come in and sign that contract. And the secretary said, well, somebody's already signed the contract. I thought, what? I mean, I'm Eagle Christian Church, right? So anyway, went in right away, and another minister in town had gone in Monday morning and just asked about renting the building, and the secretary said, oh yeah, we just voted on that Saturday. And he took the contract and he literally scratched out Eagle Christian Church and my name and put his own church and name in there. And talk about another gut punch. And so I called him actually and said, what's going on here? I was the one who arranged for 3 months. I arranged this, and he said, sorry, I've got the contract. And it was just, it was interesting. But more than that, I actually look back and say it was a God thing.
Right.
And here's why. We'd arranged for an 11 o'clock service time, but the church didn't want to have some lawsuit going on. The minister was unwilling to give up his contract. And so they said, you can come and rent the building at 9 a.m., and you can go from 9 to 10:30. And they charged us just very little rent, which actually was one of my big concerns anyway, because we really couldn't afford the building I thought we were going to go into. And so that was a blessing. But more than that, this other church had a big advertising budget.
Right.
In fact, they spent thousands of dollars a month, literally thousands of dollars a month, to get people to come to their church on Sunday morning. And when they got there, oftentimes they saw there was another church meeting in front of them. And they kind of checked it out. And we had them advertising in a real way for us on Sunday mornings. And it was great. It's like, way to go, God. So again, a thing that I was kind of upset about, and I look back and say, that was absolutely God protecting us and guiding us and directing us. It was a great thing.
Right. And there's so many stories like that through these last 30 years of God taking plans that you had or that the church had, and that got destroyed or got ruined, but God said, no, I've got something better for you. Just trust me. Yeah. We're going to get through this.
God is so faithful. And if you're faithful, God's more than faithful.
Right. And he has been for us. And so you started in that building before you officially launched on September 16th of 1995. you started in kind of a back room of that building. So we have a couple pictures I want to show. The first one is you have hair on.
Yeah,
right?
Believe it or
it's
not,
real
I did have hair.
I guess it's not, you don't have hair on, but.
Yeah, so it was my real hair.
So this is you and Sally and your first two kids, Taylor and Haley, right? And so we have this one, we have another one this is the back room you guys started in, but this is like kids ministry, and this is Mark Childs. Who's one of our elders still today, back then serving, doing kids ministry. But then you guys grew to a point.
Another amazing story, because at that time, we'd grown from 7 to a dozen or more, but we really didn't plan on doing anything other than just go and practice church on Sunday morning. So we had this back room, and we met in August. And the very first practice service, we hadn't advertised, we hadn't done anything, 44 people showed up. And it's like, where did you come from? And people had been talking. And so outgrew that back room immediately, which meant we had to plan for the auditorium, which we had rented. And so on September 16th, 1995, we had our first real service, if you will, our first formal service, and we had 111 people there. It was amazing.
God just keeps bringing people, right?
Yeah.
He just no matter what, God's working. So this is a picture of you guys in that worship center.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long before God had brought so many people to say, hey, this is going to be your church.
We were packing out that room, and we couldn't go to a second service because there was another church meeting after us.
Right, exactly. That one church. And so then you guys started looking for new land, right?
Yeah.
And that's how you ended up eventually at this property that is our Central Valley campus.
One of our elders is very familiar with land and what's going on in road design, and he told us about the new bypass that was going to go through Eagle, actually around Eagle. And so he says, whatever you want to do, you want to get beyond the bypass because it won't be...
And that bypass is now what we call State Street.
Yeah.
But it was Old State,
You want to get beyond that because there won't be any access. And so started looking at property from this side, Ballantyne, if you will, this side of Eagle, all the way out to what we knew was going to be Highway 16. 30 years ago, our elder said, someday there's going to be a road out here that's going to be a major thoroughfare. And so we wanted to be between Ballantyne and the new Highway 16, which you know is what's going in right beside us. And so I started just investigating every piece of property I could. And finally, somebody in our congregation came and said, I found an interesting piece of property, but it's tied up in a lot of problems because the man that owns it is deceased, and basically his brother now owns it, but his brother, nobody knows where he is. I think they literally said he's on the lam.
Right.
And so, and it's like there were back taxes owed on it and things like that. And so we actually hired a private investigator to find him, and when he found out there were back taxes owed on the property, it's like he didn't want anything to do with it. And so we basically agreed to pay the back taxes and then give him a sum of money too, and he was elated to have this happen. And so we bought 12.88 acres for $65,000.
Yeah, right.
And it was a benefit to everybody. And so just a God working, going for us. We didn't have $65,000. And so we had to go and borrow $65,000 to pay for that because, a new church plant, you're trying to figure out how do you plant the church and pay bills at the same time.
There was another time where we just saw God provide, right?
Absolutely.
God just stepped in and he made it happen. I've had people before, we will make a decision, do something as a church, and they're like, have you thought about that? And I'm like, let me tell you about a story about when Steve bought land 30 years before it was really fully developed. I'm like, well, Steve knew that Highway 16 was going on way a long time ago. So we like to think through stuff. You think through stuff. And when we started building on the land, I think we had a couple pictures of it actually. This was our groundbreaking of this, what is now the Central Valley property.
Yeah, 1998, I think.
Right, you can see State Street back behind that picture. We have another one of the whole kind of core team, the whole church kind of.
That was our church. That was everybody, I think, at the time when we were doing this.
We still got that sign laying around somewhere.
We do. It's amazing. We really did think, okay, God's provided this land, and we're going to build on this. We drew up plans and all kinds of things. And at that point, I need to tell part of the story because another kind of a knife in the side, we were denied 7 times building on this property for various reasons, planning and zoning and things like that. And it was hard because I thought all of a sudden we'd borrowed money I didn't have to buy property that we couldn't afford. And now all of a sudden we're not going to be able to, 7 times we're denied being able to build on this. And I just thought, God, what are you doing? And during that time, we did all kinds of things as a congregation. We had prayer meetings. We took all of our church, literally all of our church, down to planning and zoning meetings to testify and those kind of things. And it was a moment where I was pretty discouraged that we bought this property and it looks like we're not going to be able to build on it. And our elders in their wisdom took me aside, and again, they kind of asked me some questions. And the first thing I said is, well, what if it's the right piece of property, but it's not God's timing yet? Would that be a God thing or not? Shouldn't you wait for God's timing? And of course, the answer is if it's not God's timing, we should wait, right? The second thing they said, well, what if it's actually not the right piece of property? And God's telling you, I want you to build, but not on that piece of property. It'd be terrible to go ahead and build on that property if it's not God's piece of property. And so I thought, okay, that makes sense. And then they said, but here's what we really think's going on. We really think it's actually not God at all. It's the right piece of property, it's the right time, and it's not God putting up the roadblocks. And so what if actually the opposition is not coming from God, but people that are opposed to what God wants to have happen? How should you respond? And of course, the response was, we need to work harder and fight harder than ever. And so we kind of made the determination that we think until God stops us, we think this is the right piece of property, the right direction we want to go. And so we continued fighting, and finally I was a little frustrated. And so I went down to planning and zoning, and I said, I want to withdraw our application for building on the land. And they're looking at me saying, well, why would you do that? I said, well, it just looks like you're not going to let us build here. And they said, yeah, that's probably right. We're probably not going to let you build there. So I said, well, I've just kind of come to grips with that. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to build a hog rendering plant. And that got their attention.
Right. And not long after
that, we had our permits.
You had approval, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just kind of a fun story, but then we were able to build, and it's just been an amazing journey.
I use that story too to talk about sometimes people ask like, well, Steve's probably not that stubborn of a guy, right? And I'm like, no, you have no idea. Steve, when he's determined to do something, like we're going to do it. But more than that,
I would say I'm not stubborn. If God is determined to have us do something, I'm going to follow God.
That's what I was going to say. When we feel like, as a church, we've always felt like if God's calling us to do it, we're going to do it.
He's going to provide the means necessary.
We're going to go. And he has, over and over again, just provided. And you said earlier that the hardships in these difficult moments are really where you felt like you saw the church come together.
During those times, during those denials and the times we went as a church down to planning and zoning meetings and things like that, the church just came together and gelled. We had times of prayer, we had times of weeping, how we're going to get through this, and the church came together in such a way that it would have never happened without those hardships.
Right.
And so I think we're a better, stronger, more God-focused church than ever because of those type events.
God always knows.
But eventually we got our permits and were able to build.
Right, so you started building. And you had maybe just under a couple hundred people here at the time.
Yeah.
But you built the gym first and then kind of framed out the chapel.
Correct. Right? And at that time, we really thought 150, 170 people, and we thought we're building a building that we could never fill this building. I mean, never been in a church that size. I mean, gymnasium and this other wing. Right. And we were able to move in there, and in September, and we started in September, and by
September 1999, first
September
service
1999.
Yep.
Yeah. And then by December, we had to go to 2 services.
Right.
And it's like, what are we going to do? And at that point, we thought, we've got to keep building. I don't know how, but we've got to keep building.
Right.
And so
we had a couple pictures of those early days. This is John Gunst, who
John's
in our
one of our
bumper
elders,
video,
yeah.
But he's one of our elders still today. He's back there running sound and trying to figure things out. I think we had another picture of you preaching in the gym.
Yeah.
This is still here at Central Valley campus. But you guys met for the first time in the gym without a roof on it.
We actually met previous to, or we had a service in there without the top on, and we froze.
Yeah.
It was and it was pretty memorable.
But then you got into the chapel, and as you had to continue, you just said you didn't know how are we going to pay for this?
Yeah.
But you had one Sunday where you felt like God really showed his provision through generosity.
During this time, we needed to build because we were packing the gym out. We had no classroom space and those type of things. And so we actually had a man, I didn't know him hardly at all, and he came into church and he said, 2 weeks from today, I'd like to do something. I'd like to have a matching gift offering. And so, not the following Sunday, but the next Sunday, he says, whatever you take in on that Sunday, I will match that. Now, little did he know, what I was going to do is write a letter to every friend I knew and call in every favor and say, I want you to give on this. And not only that, I figured out what interest would be on a loan over the life of the loan and said, for every dollar you give, it's going to be $2.78 or whatever it is. And sent that to everybody I knew and called and said, you need to give a gift on that. And so a little tiny, just we had a handful of people. And on that Sunday, we raised $130,000, which he then
had to
matched.
Yeah.
And he did, and it just was enabled us to do that next building phase.
It was just another example of God just showing up over and over and over again in every way possible. And you had, in that time, we were looking back at statistics this week, and it was in that time, about 2004, so the church started in 1995. By 2004, you had baptized over 1,000 people.
The first 9 years, the church, a small little church, Baptized 1,000 people.
And
in Christ.
that we always track whatever as a church, but the baptism number, that's the most important one by far.
I mean, isn't it, that's what we're about, reaching
Right.
people with Jesus Christ and surrendering their lives to die to their self to live for Jesus Christ, right? And so just an amazing journey, and look back and think, way to go, God.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So we saw God doing that. You guys were really committed to this vision of reaching, teaching, equipping, and sending our people. That's our mission. That's our vision statement as a church, is we want to reach, teach, equip, and send. And we want to really reach the entire Treasure Valley for Christ. So
Yeah. During that time, we actually were growing so fast. It's
Right.
like, how do we keep up? And so it's during that time we actually thought again about church planting. Even though we were a small church plant, as we were growing and we were getting overcrowded, we decided that we were going to plant other churches. And
Right.
so we've had the opportunity during those early years to actually help, assist, come alongside, plant 7 other churches.
right, churches
And
that
so-
are still Canadian Springs and Middleton and Life Spring and Star and
The Orchard,
right, Capital City, which is now Hill City
Hill City.
downtown.
New
Yeah.
Beginnings in Cuna, which actually is a fun story
And we'll
as well.
talk about that
Yeah.
in a few minutes. But yeah, that season, I think, was just an incredible time of God moving, God doing some incredible things. You built this worship center at Central Valley Campus.
2006.
2006,
Yeah.
exactly. You had over 6 services at a time in the chapel.
Before we built this facility we're sitting in right here as we're doing our service, we were in the chapel, and we were so crowded that we did 6 services on a weekend. We did 4 services on a Sunday morning. And we actually started what we called a cafe service in the gym, but many times if things didn't go quite right or for whatever reason, we'd actually in the cafe service sing one song. I would preach in there live after that first song, and then as soon as I was done preaching, they'd kind of come drag me out, and I'd come in because they sang a whole worship set in here, and they'd take me to the worship center, and then I'd preach again and go back and forth. And so 6 services in the weekend, 4 on Sunday morning.
Right,
And
yeah.
it was amazing.
Pretty incredible, just to see
Yeah.
what God's done. So I want to talk in just a few minutes about our campuses, and kind of that was really kind of the next stage of church change. But before we do, we're going to hear from Mark Post. Postman was a guy who was here for a long time in that incredible time of growth as a church, and was just such an influential person. And he retired in 2020, but he recorded a video for us this week that we're just going to watch together and hear from him.
Hi, my name is Mark Post, and I had the great privilege of my life of coming to Eagle Christian Church in 2002 with my wife and children, and being called into ministry here under this model of reach, teach, equip, and send. We were in the chapel and in the gym, and that's all we had. And so we were cramming in. We ended up cramming in 4 services, I think, finally, before we started building again. But we built the education wing first because we needed a place for Sunday school for kids. We needed a place for being able to, spread out people and get more people in the building to be able to hear Jesus, in their lives, and to be able to see Jesus with their lives, and to be able to walk out of here convinced that Jesus is the Son of God and their Savior and their Lord. We were just running with like chickens with our heads cut off, and Steve was standing up there going, "I'm preaching it," and we're all back there going, "Go, man, go." It was just a great time to be alive at Eagle Christian Church, because it was exponentially growing beyond our ability to handle it. And so we added more staff, we added more volunteers, we built teams. There's all kinds of teams in this building now and beyond that were built back then because we needed more help to do the things we needed to do. And I'm so grateful for Steve's leadership, because he was always very clear. This is the vision of Eagle Christian Church. God has given us a vision together for Eagle Christian Church. And we all were on the same page. Talk about the unity of the Spirit. I felt the unity of the Spirit from the day I entered this ministry until the day I left this ministry. And I'm still a part of it because I still carry it with me all the time. And it's the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced in my life. The growth of Eagle Christian was the hand of Jesus on his people for the purpose of glorifying him and lifting him up, because none of us had ever been here before.
Well,
I do want you to know that when he started Eagle Christian Church, he also had hair.
yeah.
Just to let you know.
I am hoping I keep mine for a little bit longer, But I love what Mark said, just that it was the hand of Jesus on this church, and that's what it's always been. It's always been about what God is doing. And so not long after that period, right, we kind of fell into this multi-site model that we have now of having multiple campuses. And we have a lot of people ask us today, like, well, what's going on at that other church? Like, what's happening at that other church across town? And I just want to say, our multi-site model and our campuses are not separate churches. We're one church. We actually all do the same thing. We watch the same sermons every weekend. We're moving in the same direction all over the valley. But God's really kind of given us this vision that we want to be within 20 minutes of anyone in this valley so we can reach the Treasure Valley for Jesus.
We don't want people to say, you drive where to go
Right.
to church? We want them to be able to do church in their community.
Exactly.
You said we fell into it. I'd say we were pushed into it reluctantly.
Maybe so, yeah. So 2014. So tell us, our first campus was what is now our Surprise Valley campus in East Boise.
So I have
tell
a
us
friend
about it.
who was a minister across town. It's East Wind. He was the minister there, Mark Traylor. And he called me up and said, you need to buy the church across the street from me. My first response is, why don't you buy the church across the street from you? And he said, I like winning people for Jesus, but I can't take them deep. You can take them deep. And so he wanted us to partner with him across the street. And so he said, you need to buy that building. And it's like, we don't need to buy another building. Why would we do that? And so had some initial conversations, and the numbers they were throwing out for this church building, they were just like, I can spend millions of dollars somewhere else. I don't need to go do that. And so the answer for me initially was like, yeah, we don't need to do that. And so kind of left it to that until I was in Israel, leading a tour in Israel. I got this phone call from the other church, and they said, we really want you to buy this church building. And it's like, I'm not interested. The only way I'd be interested, maybe I would take over your existing debt, but I'm not going to pay millions of dollars for this church building. And so it's like, I'll take over your existing debt and do that kind of stuff. And they said, okay. And it's like, hold a second. I wasn't ready for that answer. It was in June in Israel. Came back in July and August. Basically, we had to make arrangements for what was going on. And the deal was we would take over the church building, but we'd also provide a ministry for the people that were currently there at the church. And so we couldn't stop services. And we weren't ready for this at all. And so we took possession of the building the 1st of September. The next weekend, we actually had a service to honor and kind of close the old church building. And then the following week, middle of September.
Right, September 14th, I think, yeah.
September 14th, 2014.
Right.
It's like we had to do church. And we were not ready at all. And so here's what we did. We pushed the service till 1:30 in the afternoon, preached 2 services here on Sunday morning. We'd get in the car, drive 40 minutes across town with the worship team, and do services in the afternoon over there because we wanted to honor our commitment to provide church for the people that had been their church home. And so for a little over a year, I think, we were driving over every afternoon and doing church over there. And I've got to tell you, what an amazing congregation, our Surprise Valley congregation, because they kind of were with us through that transition, and they were our guinea pigs about how to do this. And we've had to shift models and do so many things, and they've been pliable, certainly faithful as we've gone through there. And actually now when we look back at our Surprise Valley campus, you need to realize they now are celebrating their 11th birthday. So I want to say happy birthday, happy anniversary to Surprise Valley, turn to each other and say happy anniversary, because you guys have been amazing, and to see what God has been doing out there, we love you.
Yeah,
and so
it's been fun. So that was 2014.
I got to finish the story.
Okay,
so
tell us more.
We paid pennies, literally pennies, for the value of that. So much so that we had to have the building appraised, and when the appraiser came to say, is this a good investment? He just kind of got to the driveway and he turned around and said, yeah, I don't even need to go in that building. That's worth far more than that. As it turns out, the furnishings on the inside of the building are worth more than what we paid for the entire 25 acres at Surprise Valley. And so it was pretty amazing.
This is another example of us just following God. God opens a door, and we're like, we'll walk through it.
You're faithful, God provides.
Faithful. That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that was 2014. So then a couple years later, I think we started thinking like, well, where are we going next? If we're going to do this multi-site thing, where are we going? And our goal was to identify 2 locations and start one, right?
Yeah, identify 2, launch 1. And our criteria, we've got lots of criteria, but our criteria kind of looks like this. Our criteria, first of all, is we'd like to leave some of the pressure from our Central Valley campus because it keeps growing and we need to create more room. And so where do we have people driving from that we can go and we can establish a campus there? The second thing is, in their neighborhood, right? So they don't have to say, you drive to church where?
Right.
And the second criteria is we want to go to an area that isn't over-churched. We'd like to go to a church, an area that needs more churches, because there are Bible-believing churches, and we want to partner with them. We're not the only Christians, we're just Christians. And so we'd like to identify an area where there needs to be more churches. And the third one really is opportunity, right? Because God moving us in that direction. So we identified rather quickly, because of a heat map, if you will, where our people were coming from, and West Valley was an area that we said we've got to go there. And
so we got to go to Nampa Caldwell.
Yeah, got to go to Nampa Caldwell, and we sent letters out telling other churches that were there, here's what we'd like to do, and we'd like to partner with you, and those kind of things, and where the interest is. And when we sent that letter out to the churches saying, here's what we're planning on doing, we'd like your input, one of our church plants previously, our New Beginnings, said, would you consider us?
New Beginnings Christian Church in Cuna.
Yeah.
We'd help plant
and our
that.
answer was, no. We don't really want to do that.
Church. Where you're going. Yeah.
And so, but we kind of did eventually identify two places. We'd like to go to West Valley, and then we did say, well, Cuna. We'll go to Cuna. And so during that time, I was dreaming and talking and thinking, where could we go? And I had a few places in mind that I thought maybe we'd go, and so I asked a friend to go and drive me around and look at pieces of property. And there are a couple places we'd identified, thought, hey, this might be a good place. And
we were meeting at Vision Charter School for a little while, and then Nampa Christian. We had to move during COVID, right?
Yeah.
But then, so then back to
you.
let
me tell that story too, because we were at Vision Charter School when COVID hit, and we thought we had an agreement with them, but one week we had an agreement with them. The next week they gave us grace and said, you can meet one more week, and then we were out.
And then we had to go.
And it's like, what do we do now? And Nampa Christian became available, and what a God thing. COVID put us in a place where they were like-minded, and the church grew and thrived in the Nampa Christian building. And again, it's like, way to go, God.
Right.
Which gets us back to our story. So we're looking at a place that we couldn't stay there forever. We're looking for a place to meet. And so we with a friend, we went and started touring around and looking at pieces of property. And there's one piece of property that he kept saying, well, what about this one? And I was like, I would love that piece of property, but there's no way I can afford that piece of property. And he kept saying, well, what if you could? It's like, yeah, we can't afford that piece of property. Well, what if you could? And with his help and with God's blessing and everything else going on, that we now own what I think is one of the best pieces of property in terms of visibility.
We got a picture of it
in all of
right
Idaho, right? Everybody that drives by on the freeway, we have a big billboard, electronic sign that says Eagle Christian Church on the side of it, and it's just like, way to go, God, right? In terms of that, and that congregation, it's grown from 700 to 800 people now to the point where we are right now in a building project adding an education wing on that piece of property, and
they're celebrating 6 years this year, so we got to say happy
so we've
birthday,
got to
West
say
Valley.
happy anniversary, West Valley. Way to go! We love you and what you're doing there. So turn to each other, West Valley, and say happy anniversary to each other. Way to go! And don't we serve a great God? It's just God is faithful.
Yeah. So we talked about it at that same time, right in the middle of COVID. We had New Beginnings Christian Church reach out to us and say, hey, put us under your umbrella and make us one of your campuses. And we had initially said no, but then as COVID hit, we had the capabilities to be online, and they didn't. And so it was kind of during that time they kind of unofficially joined us as a campus, and then we kept talking. And then later that year, it was probably 2021, we said, okay, let's officially launch ECC Cuna, right?
Yeah, we actually took possession of their...
they had land that they owned but hadn't built on.
And kind of officially transitioned to say, this will be part of Eagle Christian Church. And then we built the same building as West Valley, we built out in Cuna there. And so, and they've been so amazing. They've been through this transition of going from being their own independent congregation to becoming part of our church family here. It's been great, and to see them grow. And they're in the 400s and 500s,
reaching young
out
families,
there.
And it's been fun.
This same time period now, it's kind of hard to put exact time on, but we need to say happy anniversary. It's their 4th anniversary out of Cuna. So you guys need to turn to each other and say, happy birthday, happy anniversary, and way to go. It's so exciting to see, especially all the young families out at the Cuna campus.
Right. So it's been so fun to see what God has done over these last 30 years, but we know God's not done yet. We got another, hopefully more than 30
the best years are still ahead
in front of us. And we've even been dreaming about where's God taking us next, right? And we're going to end this weekend with a night of worship, and we're going to talk about some vision pieces, but I want to just share a little bit of that today. So let's talk about a couple future campuses we know are coming. One is Garden City, and a couple years ago, we started talking and said, where do we think God's leading us next? Where are we going to go? And we both,
using
using those same 3 criteria, let's go to Garden City. There's not a lot of churches there. There's opportunity there. What are we going to do? And we identified a few locations.
Yeah, and so using our heat map again,
Right.
in terms of where are people already coming from, we identified Garden City, and then also this criteria of there aren't a lot of churches in Garden City. There aren't, and you just know that to be true. And so we thought that's good. And then opportunity. And so it's kind of thinking, well, where could we go? And we kind of identified some places that we thought maybe we could go. And so we looked down at the corner of Glenwood and State Street.
Right.
We thought there's a Big Lots building, or we thought down across from the fairgrounds, there's another area there that might be a good location, or maybe even down State Street, closer towards Boise, there might be an area there. And so, again, I had some conversations with a friend. He's like, okay, where do you want to go? Maybe we can make this happen, seriously. And, well, as a result of all that, we are going, it's right across from the fairgrounds, and the Revolution Town Hall.
Concert hall, yeah.
Concert hall.
Yeah.
And so in January, February, and March, we're going to have the last Sunday of each of those months, we're going to have preview services there at the Garden City. Stephen Huggins is going to be our campus pastor there. And then starting in April, the 5th of April,
Right.
The first Sunday of April, we are launching our Garden City campus. And so excited
Right.
About what's going on
And
there.
we want as many people there Sunday afternoon to do, I think around 1:30, we're doing a prayer walk.
Sunday
praying over that
afternoon,
campus.
2
It's
to
gonna be fun.
3:30.
Right.
We're having a prayer walk there, and you can go down and you can kind of hear the vision of what's going on. I think we're going to be able to write on some sheetrock prayer requests of people we would like to see come to Jesus Christ, because that's what it's all about.
Right.
It's going to be a great time.
So that's 2026. Then we have in November of this year, just a month and a half away or so, we're planning to launch our prison campus. And that one was fun because I'll just tell a story real quick. We had a guy who used to work here, one of my good friends, Barton, he called me and said...
He's here visiting with us this weekend.
He is, yeah. And he came and said, hey, I want to connect you with God Behind Bars. And I said, well, we're not really interested in that. We got other campuses we're doing. And I said, but I'll take the meeting because you're a friend and we'll do it. And I met with God Behind Bars and said, I think we should do this. But I was like, there's no way Steve is going to get on board with this. And so I walked into your office and I said, hey, here's an idea. Here's what they want to do. I don't know. And you said, we have to do that. And we went to the elders and thought, there's no way the elders are going to get on board with this. We don't have a budget. We haven't figured it out. And the elders said, we have to do that. And so we're going to be in Idaho State Correctional Institution, ISCI.
Yeah, we kind of joking because we have Surprise Valley and West Valley. We've got a CUNA campus, and
Right.
we're going to have a Garden City campus. And so
that that facility is on Pleasant Valley Road. So,
so it's going to be our Pleasant Valley campus.
Exactly.
And I've been
Right.
telling people you need to go serve there, and then I think that's probably the wrong words. You need to go minister there.
we're not going to serve time there.
Yeah,
we're going to
you
go
just-
minister there.
But we're excited about that.
We're very excited. It's like the prison population in America is one of the most unreached population groups in the country. And so we're excited about being in there. And then in the near future, hopefully, we don't know a timetable yet, but Emmett.
Yeah, so we've got land. We've had the ability to get land in Emmett. If you go to Emmett and drive down the hill, before you get to Albertsons, land right there on the north side of the road that we own. And we don't know, God's got to go before us and provide leadership and those type of things there.
Right.
But in the semi-near future,
Right.
we're going to have an Emmett campus as well, and really excited about that.
It's been fun. I mean, I've only been here for 13 years, but it's been so fun to just walk through the doors as a church together and say, we're just going to go where God leads us. And it's been so, I was thinking this week when we were talking about this all is, when you think about when God first makes his covenant with Abraham, obviously we're not Abraham, but he tells Abraham, he gives him a promise, and he says, I'm going to bring you people, I'm going to give you a nation, and I'm also going to give you provision, I'm going to give you land. And he's done the same thing for us. Like, he has just given us provision after provision after provision, and he's been so faithful to us.
So faithful, and it's just amazing. We serve a great God.
Yeah.
And again, I've got to stop and say, most of the hardships we've gone through as a church, we look back and say, we'd never be where we are today without those things. And
Right.
things we thought were roadblocks, even ministry enders almost, they just propelled us forward because God takes those obstacles and he uses those for his glory. And just an amazing God. And I think
fun.
God is just getting started
I think so too.
with us. And so I said to begin as we started today, that first of all, I want to invest my life in something much bigger than myself. I don't care if they remember who I am, really, but can I invest my life in something that's going to outlive me and until Jesus Christ comes again, is going to be faithfully reaching disciples for Jesus Christ. And I would say you're going to be hard-pressed to find a better investment in the kingdom of God than investing in his church, which will
Right.
continue reaching people for Jesus Christ.
Forever.
And so what a great investment, but I want to do something significant with my one and only life. And we want to call you forward to do that same thing. I really do believe that God's hand has been working here at Eagle Christian for the last 30 years, but he's just getting started with us. We're poised, we're positioned like never before, and we're wondering what it would be like to put a Bible-believing church in every community in the Treasure Valley. What would it be like to take the gospel message from Eagle, Surprise Valley, Cuna, and beyond with the gospel message of Jesus Christ? And we're calling you to be part of that.
Be a part of that, for sure.
Yeah. Got anything else you want to say? I've got just a few words that I want to stand and say. This would never be possible, first of all, without God's blessing, right? God's faithful. When we're faithful, God is even more, he's always faithful. God honors faithfulness. And that goes for our eldership. You need to realize that we have men of integrity, godly men who've been leading Eagle Christian Church. And I just want you to let you know that. We've got a staff, men and women of integrity. That it's not a show, it's not a job. We've got men and women of integrity who are giving their life to Jesus Christ in service, and it would never happen without all our staff. But most of all, I want to say it's not possible without you. Many of you have sacrificed greatly. You've invested in something bigger than yourself, and I'm going to say it one more time. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a place that you'd get better return on your investment than investing in the kingdom of God and reaching people with the gospel message of Jesus Christ. And so this weekend, we just want to celebrate. And today we've kind of talked about what God has done. If you come back Sunday evening, we're going to have food trucks and things like that. But then we're going to have a night of vision and worship. And we're going to try to dream and say, what is God calling us to the next 30 years? And I want to invite you to be part of that. Would you pray with me? Let's pray. Father, thank you for being such a great God. And Father, sometimes when we see storms, when we see crisis, when we see problems, what you see is future and where you want to take us and where you want to lead us. And just thank you for being faithful through the years. Father, thank you for the leadership, the eldership, the staff, the men and women who have volunteered time and resources and given their lives in service of you at Eagle Christian Church. And Father, use us for your glory. And that's our prayer. And we pray this in the blessed name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Amen.